Genital mutilation, FGM, is a harmful practice that affects women and girls. Let's talk FGM every Wednesday at 2 p.m. on Women Radio WFM 91.7. Together, we must fight against FGM and end this harmful in Nigeria. Let's talk FGM Wednesdays 2 p.m. on Women Radio WFM 91.7. Let's talk FGM is supported by HACEY Health Initiative.
Àṣàkẹ́ Yéṣu kú omi rán pẹ́ síbí ìyá àgbà onígi ló fẹ́ dábẹ́ fún wọn. Mo fẹ́ dábẹ́ fún wọn mi. Àwọn àdúgbò ẹ̀gbà wọ́n wọ́n fẹ́ dábẹ́ fún ọmọ ẹ̀gbà wọ́n àwọn ọmọ fẹ́yìn ló fẹ́ dábẹ́ fáṣàkẹ́ ìyá àgbà onígi gan ni wọ́n sì pè pé kó wọ́n dábẹ́ fún. Ṣébí ìjọba ti ní ohun tó léwu ni. Ewu ti ní láti máa dábẹ́ fún obìnrin. Ṣébí nǹkan tí wọ́n fi yín bàbá bọ́lá lọ sí ẹ̀wọ̀n ọdún lẹ́yìn nígbà ọ̀nà. Àti ẹ ti fẹ́ kọ́mọ yín kú. Àwọn ọmọ pọ́n tó léwu ni. Àwọn òwúrọ̀ ọ̀làjú ló fẹ́ bá àṣà àti ìṣe wa jẹ́. Ó yẹ ẹja lọ lé àdábẹ́mọ́ ilé ìgbà onígi ń kọ́. Iṣẹ́ òtẹ̀tẹ̀ ló tẹ̀ mọ́ wọn lójú náà fẹ́ sí pé kíkà bẹ́ fọmọbìnrin tí ò dá ní kí wọ́n lè pàtí nílẹ̀ kan á gbọ́dọ̀ fẹjọ́ lọ sùn ní. Ẹ̀yin èèyàn wa kíkà bẹ́ fọmọbìnrin ò dára rárá ó sì kú fún un. Bí ẹ bá mọ ẹnikẹ́ni tó ń gbèrò láti dábẹ́ fọmọbìnrin ẹ lọ sọ fáwọn agbófinró tó bá súnmọ́ yín tàbí kẹ́ ẹ pè nọ́mbà 08124670069. Ẹ jẹ́ ká sowọ́pọ̀ láti dẹ́kun ìdábẹ́ ọmọbìnrin. Ìkéde yìí wá láti iléeṣẹ́ HACEY Health Initiative pẹ̀lú àtìlẹ́yìn àjọ àgbáyé United Nations Trust Fund láti fi òpin sí ìwà kò tọ́ sí àwọn obìnrin.
Good afternoon and welcome to Let's Talk FGM on your Women Radio WFM 91.7. My name is Tonto Titilayo Ajama. Today on Let's Talk FGM, we're talking about men as key players in ending FGM. Men as key players in ending FGM. Let's Talk FGM is an initiative of HACEY Health Initiative in partnership with Women Radio 91.7 and funded by the United Nations Trust Fund to end violence against women. Now, men in their roles as fathers, husbands, community, and religious leaders could play a pivotal role in ending female genital mutilation, popularly known as FGM. Now, according to research, more than 125 million girls and women in 29 African and Middle East countries have been subjected to female genital mutilation. So it's important for men and young boys in particular, as future leaders, of course, to get engaged to stop gender norms that perpetrates FGM and be a part of the solution to ending FGM instead. Education is a very important factor for players in FGM, in ending FGM. Now, to give you more information on that, and of course to give us more, to do more justice, yes, to the subject of men as key players in ending FGM, I have my guest with me today in the studio, Michael Ebofe, an anti-sexual and gender-based violence and anti-female genital mutilation activist. I need to say that again. An anti-sexual genital mutilation activist. Good afternoon, Michael. Today on Let's Talk FGM.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining us today on Let's. Pleasure having you in the studio today. All right. To join the conversation, you can call the number 0703 175 6537. Send your text or WhatsApp messages to that number. But if you want to call, the number to call is 07000 917 917. All right. Going straight into conversation now. We've talked about, I've told us the topic, men as key players in ending FGM. I'm just going to throw the to you out of the blue. FGM. I'm just going to throw the question to you out of the blue. And just go straight to addressing what the subject says. So how can men, because we know that this is done against women, so how can men be active players in ending female genital mutilation? Do they even know enough about it?
Yeah, thank you very much. Men are even most perpetrators in this act because they taught women how to do it. Because in Yoruba context, we call them Olola. That is the traditional circumcisers. And they teach their children, even male, female, in their traditional practices because they feel it is part of our culture. It's part of our heritage that cannot really be thrown away. And that's why we have so many men in the business. And it's even a business stuff too. they make much money. They make much money, which is a profession being handed over to their children, be it male or female. Even like we have drummers too. You know, we have talking drummers that we have them in our various setup in our culture. Then they teach their children how to drum. Even we have masquerades as well. So it's just like that, like in the cultural setting and even tradition and beliefs. That's why we have that. And that's why we have many men involved in this act. And again, men are even custodians of our traditions and customs, because there are some places where women cannot go when we are talking about traditional arena. You have men and they have mouth and they can perform all those rites and a lot of that. Then men are also heads of families that we have it in our culture as well. African culture. Men, heads of the family. Yes. We are there. We are in charge. And as heads of communities, it is now that we are having women coming up in full force to really be heard and really be listened to and really be given the space to speak as decision makers. But we still have men as key decision makers in our communities. Then we also have men play their roles, like I mentioned, as fathers, as husbands, and even as religious leaders too. If we put all religious leaders together, you find that you have high percentage of men. And when they say some things, you know that whatever they want to move, they move. Whatever they're really not consented to do, it will not really fly. And that's why we really know that we have to really hold on to men to really end these practices. Because though we have some women that are doing it, but if men are standing, it will never be done.
Because they're key decision makers, as you rightly said.
Yes. And they have the force, even in their homes. Because the wife will not just take the child out to go and circumcise.
If the husband doesn't know about it.
And if the husband should know if the husband doesn't know about it and he gets to know about it, it's already fire for fire. So that is it. And men must consent to it before it is being done, except for men that are not even real men too. That is some of the issues we are really battling with.
See, that makes a lot of sense, because you've outlined the different roles in different settings that men play that obviously influence female genital mutilation.
Yes.
And this for me is very important, because without these men in these spaces, you know that some things cannot fly. Like you said, some things cannot be done. And this is not to downplay the importance of women, but it's just evident in the society that we live in that men occupy a lot of positions. And in those positions, they actually have the influence to end female genital mutilation.
They have it.
So, do they understand the implications of female genital mutilation on young women and young girls? Yes. Would you say that they do?
They do, because if somebody, no matter how huge a man is, if a child takes just a needle and just use it to pinch the dad, you will see how the man will react. Then for somebody now be using blade, scissors, or some other things on someone, cutting flesh out of somebody, I know what that means. Mutilation, that is the pain will be more than that pinching with ordinary needle or even injection. Just taking an injection for now. Even you see some men, they will not take it. Some men run for injections. They will say, no, I can't take it. I can't stand it. Then, since you know the pain, how come you are not inflicting it on someone else? So do you mean that you really know that it's painful and it's not good? So that is it.
So you're saying that they know?
They know.
So if they do know, then how are they still towing the line of tradition? And how are these men still the custodians, as you said? Because I'm quoting you, Michael, I'm not the one that said it. It's you.
No. Yes.
So how are these men still the custodians of this same tradition that, that basically acknowledges and endorses female genital mutilation?
Yeah, reason being that because it's a tradition that we are trying to eradicate because it's not really helpful. Number one, we know that it has a lot of hazards, and
yes,
they say, there is taboo. It is taboo for a lady not to be mutilated, because they have a lot of things. There are so many things tagged to it that if a girl child is not circumcised, the girl child will be promiscuous. It will be this. By the time the girl gets married, she may not even be able to enjoy sex. That's another thing. All these things are myths that are not really factual. And even if somebody escapes that, if the lady escapes that, by the time the lady wants to give birth to the first child, will be very serious, and she will not be able to give birth to that child, and they may eventually die.
Yes, that one is fact.
Fact. But death through not being mutilated is not, because it even causes a lot of things. There are a lot of dangers that are attached to it. And because some men still believe in all this old tradition. Because no, if you don't do this, those days now when it's raining, you don't go out. When it's raining, you don't do some things. When it's raining, you don't sit on the motor. I mean, there are a lot of things that are just things that are fiction,
myths and misconceptions.
So that we really need to
do away with.
That are not really helping us. Are not realistic.
So if I'm getting it correctly, what you're saying now is these men are still custodians of this tradition because that's what they know it as. That's what they understand it to be. Just tradition. So they feel, okay, because it's been there long before now, let's just continue upholding this tradition.
Yes.
Knowing that, or now is when they're getting to know that there are some of these implications.
Yes. So in the past too, some men too, they like from our findings and from what we do in the community, like we have some of the kings and some of the elders in the community. Please, if a lady is not mutilated, what happens? They say, our forefathers owed it that. And it will not be my own time to now say I'm going to end it, abolish it. But now the world is saying it is a crime against a girl child. It is a crime against women. It is a crime in Nigeria and even in the world over. Then, if anything is being criminalized, then you dare not do it. You do it, you are already playing with fire. And that is what we are pushing now. Because it's not only education that really matters in this case now.
Absolutely.
Not education. There are behavior we need to inculcate in our people, that we need to stop some of this culture that are not really helpful to us.
That's very true.
And it is not even biblical. Because we waive a lot of things and say, Pastor, is it written that you must mutilate a girl or this or that? Some of them will tell you, I've never read that. I wouldn't know where some other people are getting all this from. Is it in the Quran? There are first we tell you, well, in our own religion, we don't even see anything like that you have to cause a kind of harm in somebody
to the child,
to a child, and now say, and when you see a lot of them bleeding and they lead to death, so why should we now say it's a culture that you have to continue with? So with that, and some, because they were, no, I don't want to be the first to do this, I don't want to be the first to do that. But now we have been having the firsts.
Yes.
So many now that are abandoning it. I see no reason why other men will not follow suit.
Absolutely.
Because the law is there. Even the VAP is there now in Nigeria. And it's been domesticated, even in Osun. Domesticated. And I think maybe because it's domesticated, and I wouldn't know. But because it is a law that must really be taken very seriously.
That's very true. So, we talked about this at the previous program, and I asked this question about whether young men know about female genital mutilation, to which I got the response that yes, they do. And nowadays they're even getting more enlightened about it. Yes. So I want to ask you now, how is FGM linked to patriarchy? Everybody talks about patriarchy and how we live in a hugely patriarchal society. So how is FGM linked to patriarchy? and male dominance in Africa or Nigeria, to be specific?
Well, if you look at that, like I mentioned earlier, that when we are talking about this tradition, it's already part of us. Mm-hmm. We have taken it to be our culture. Like, if even we have so many traditions that really came up with, we grew up with, that our forefathers grew up with. But looking at a lot of things, we have to be very, very careful now. I mean, when there's nothing that cannot really be stopped when you know that it is taking life. We don't bring life, we don't create life, and we must not kill anyone, mm-hmm. and we must not cause any harm into someone. But if a tradition is not helpful, so you just forget about all those things. And more so, that government are taking power over a lot of things. Even look at our kings too now. In the past, they used to make laws and do a lot of things, enforce law, and they make sure that they put their feet on ground and ensure things are gone the way they want it to go, and stop whatever they want to stop. But now, government are taking over, but we have laws. Mm-hmm. We're in a changing world.
Yes.
We're in a modernized world now, civilized nation. So anyone who still wants to go, I want to go back to archaic, to the archaic style, mm-hmm. or the period, the person will really be, I mean, the law will take the person off.
That's very true. That's very true. Okay, this is 17 minutes past 2 on your Women Radio WFM 91.7. And of course, this is Let's Talk FGM. Let's Talk FGM basically highlights everything about female genital mutilation. And today we're talking about men as key players in ending FGM. Men as key players in ending FGM. Let's Talk FGM is an initiative of HACEY Health Initiative in partnership with Women Radio 91.7 and funded by the United Nations Trust Fund to end violence against women.
Circumcision no good at all. When you want destroy your pikin life, Papa Dora. You know say person wey pay somebody to do circumcision, and person wey do the circumcision, all of them go prison wey fit reach like 4 years, and then fit still even pay 200,000. If you give person ordinary advice, say they do circumcision, you go still go prison for like 2 years, and still pay like 100,000 for money. You sure tell my family that call this law first messages to go arrest you. Wetin dey do no good? You no circumcise the right again. Papa Dada carry your yamayama knife comot my house. Only them go report you. Circumcision no good at all. As e dey cause plenty palava for girls' body. My people, if you hear or see person wey wan circumcise any girl, sharply go to law enforcement person near you, or make you go 0812 467 0069. Female circumcision no good. Make we join hands stop am.
Na HACEY Health Initiative to stop court protest wey dey funded by United Nations Trust Fund to end violence against women. Bring una this message.
Yeah, so female circumcision, no good. You've heard it, and of course, this is still Let's Talk FGM on your Women Radio WFM 91.7. My name is Somto Titilayo Jamma, and today we're discussing men as key players in ending FGM. My guest is Michael Ebofe, an anti-sexual and gender-based violence and an anti-female genital mutilation activist. Again, men as key players in ending FGM. Let's Talk FGM is an initiative of HACEY Health Initiative in partnership with Women Radio 91.7 and funded by the United Nations Trust Fund to end violence against women. You can contribute by calling the number 07000 917 917. 07000 917 917. You can also share your messages, text or WhatsApp messages. Send them to 0703 175 6537. 0703 175 6537. Okay. Now we've talked about the issues and ways in which men are championing FGM itself. Yes. We've talked about the fact that they are involved in these traditions, yes. The fact that they hold it dearly, and sometimes without even knowing why they're doing it. Yes. They're just doing it because, tradition says. So now let's talk about how men can be instrumental in ending FGM. So what are some ways that we can get men to champion the cause of ending FGM, not practicing FGM?
Thank you very much. Like I stated that when men have known the implication of the act. Like if you look at the percentage of those who are really aware of the implications, they are not. I think it's about less than 27%, less than 27% that are aware of the implication. I think I should think so. That I mean the implication, because if videos are shown to men, a lot of them will be weeping because men don't think men are that strong. By the time they look at something, some women will still stand, but you still see some men shedding tears and they'll be shaking. But by the time they look at some videos, they will remove their eyes because they won't be able to stand it. They will say women are emotional, but men are more emotional than women when it comes to that. And when it comes to standing and taking decisions, women are very strong. From experience, women are very strong.
There's no argument here.
Yeah, women are very strong. But men, they will just say, I'm a man. We carry that and it gets too much into our brain somehow. Sorry of me for some people that will not want to agree, but me, I
agree.
And I know what I'm doing and I know what I'm saying.
We agree.
Yeah. But one thing is that men as fathers in the house,
yes,
you have a child. And you have been hearing that if you do that, if you mutilate your child, you are going to be imprisoned. By the time 1, 2, 3 fathers have been jailed and even publicized on the newspaper, news, television carrying them, I believe many men will run away from that. And they will ensure that their family members do not go into that again. And men are fathers of the children because there is no woman that will come now and say, I'm pregnant. Who has a pregnancy? No, it's Holy Spirit.
It's definitely a man.
It will not happen.
It's definitely a man.
So the man standing against it, that okay, no, my child is not going to be mutilated. Standing and monitoring, because like we have foot soldiers now. We have foot soldiers in our show, and foot soldiers that are mouth soldiers too. That monitoring pregnant women. By the time they give birth, we go for a naming ceremony. And at the end of the day, they'll be monitoring, visiting, and see if there is any bandage or any plaster around that girl's plate. They will now monitor. So please, they will intimate some other people. Please, something is happening. Let the task force go and monitor. Let them go and just observe. They have the right to invite and say, please, we want to know. So by the time we have that, men will be scared doing that, and nobody will want to put their family into shame.
Absolutely.
To shame, yes.
See, that is very true. That is very true. Linking what you just said to ending FGM, do you think that men have the awareness about the psychological effects of FGM? Now, it's one thing to know that it's a crime. It's one thing to know that it's a crime. Like, okay, if you do this, there are very high chances that if you are caught, you will most likely go to jail. But minus the legal aspect of it, minus the crime or criminal aspect of things, do you think enough men as fathers know about the psychological effects of FGM?
Yes. Men are products of a family. They have a mother and they have a father. Men, boys, let's just begin from boys now.
Okay.
Like a woman now sitting his son down and say, please, I passed through this. I was about 15 or thereabout when I was being mutilated. And this cost me a lot of things. And some did not even get out of it. Because of that, some will not even hold blade, a razor blade. Some women will not hold the blade. Because seeing somebody holding a razor blade, cutting them, the psychological effect will still remain. And some, by the time they see any little knife, or anything, this local knife will run away. So by the time those children, women are now exposing their boy child. It's okay, look at what has happened, this. It will be ringing bell in that boy. By the time he gets old too, he will say, no, I won't support that. The psychological thing is there. Somebody is down always, even a married lady will be married and may not even have, may not conceive because of the trauma she has been having. And when she's not psychologically stable, there's no way things can work out fine for her. So with that, it is one of those things that we have to really putting together are now mistreated. Okay, the psychological part of it is serious, but that's why we need a serious counselor. By the time somebody has passed through that, but like look at some ladies now, even in the tertiary institution, by the time they just remember what had happened to them, a lot of them, you see them misbehaving, dropping in their academics performance, and by the time they now get to counselor, they now say, each time I remember this. And it takes the grace of God for such person to really get out of it. It's not a good experience at all.
Yes.
So with that, we have to ensure that we monitor our girl child very well. Like some women do take these children away. Some grandmas, like in the jingle, there are some grandmas will just say, oh, come and visit me, and their sons may not know. So by the time a lot of things like that are happening, and the children can speak out when anything happens to them, oh, grandma took me to so and so place. So with that, we take things up like that from there.
So let me just ask, you mentioned monitoring the task force you referred to. So what are some strategies that can be employed to involve men in the fight against FGM?
Religious leaders have a serious role to play, because like in some religious, even in some mosques, even at Jumat prayer centers,
yes,
we still hear some when they are giving sermon, they still bring in some of these things, day-to-day activity, day-to-day effects that happens that are happening. That please be warned. Government said this. Our religion is not supporting it. Whatever the government says, the religion flows with it. You must obey it. Because if you don't, if you are caught, don't say it is God who asked you to do it. The law of the land will take you first. Then, houses, parents, like I mentioned, we should continue to do that. While our health workers as well should really be warned and monitored. Because like we have some of the health attendants, these birth attendants, local birth attendants, a lot of them do practice it. So by the time, and the law is there. So what we should really do now, I think we should really do now, I was speaking with some people in that we need to make this verb law and a lot of things and translate them into Yoruba language so that we can be playing it often on the radio. Anytime we go, we give them the leaflets. So look at what is happening. If anybody has been shown the real sense of the law, I'm sure many people will not do it. Then men, wherever they are, even the traditional rulers, we have been engaging them. Even HACEY has been engaging them, engaging the media, and the information is almost everywhere, even at the grassroots. Farmers meeting, people are there to sensitize them. So at those places, so when they are meeting, say, please don't try it. If you try it and you are caught, this will happen. Then landlord association meetings too. HACEY has been engaging them too in Oshu, and I believe they are doing that in many places too, and Ondo, Ekiti, and Oyo, and some other places like that. So when among landlord associations, you find men, many of them.
Yes.
So we only find few women. So when men are now saying, please, listen very well, or if you are caught, or if you are reported at the meeting, we are going to do this. And I believe, I trust men. When they want to do something, they will do it. Because even look at vigilantes, surveillance in their area. If anything happens, they will make sure that they enact that law in their community and they enforce it. So if anybody does any play around it, they know they're going to face the law, and that's the tune.
That sounds very interesting. And I say that because in all these different settings that you've mentioned, a good amount of conversation would not typically involve female genital mutilation.
Yeah.
Not for advocacy and continuous talking about, continuous awareness. About female genital mutilation.
It's the implications.
This is not something that a typical landlord association's meeting would be. You would not normally hear about this, but now that this enlightenment is going on,
we do that.
Yes, absolutely.
It's how they're doing that.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That is because of the advocacy.
Yes.
That's why we're hearing conversations like that at
yes.
such settings.
Yes.
So definitely that is something to be emulated.
Yes.
So being an anti-female genital mutilation activist, in your experience, can you share maybe one or two stories that you've experienced personally where people actually didn't know, more men actually didn't know about female genital mutilation, and when they did know, how was that transformation process like?
Well, like I think it should be when I was in the primary school. There was one of my mates then. I think they did it for her at that particular time, and the father didn't know because I think the father was a teacher in one village at that time.
Okay.
You know, those days they just come back maybe twice in a month. They just come around, but sometimes you just see them coming around on some teachers or some people like that, like those days. So at that time, this girl was not coming to school. Then, I think about 2 weeks later, some of us just went closer to their house to really ask what was happening. But the people in the community, in their compound, knew that the grandma came. Since the grandma came, the girl could not even come out for 3 days. Then the toilet always outside the house. Yes, that you have to get out of the house and get there. That each time, some of them were now monitoring, say potty, they're now taking potty into the room and so because you will hear something.
People will talk.
So at that time, so they realized something must have been happening. So now children now they got to know what was happening. So there's why they did something and blood was coming out before you know it. And I think when the man got to know about that, he was not really happy. He was not really happy that they had to be calling meetings for meetings at night. Even the family of the wife was being, there was a lot of things that happened. But at that time, I believe that the man was not in support of that.
Okay.
I believe he was not in support of that. But some men agreed to it. It happens that they agree to it. They just say, okay, no, let's just go. Some of them go to some of these local hospitals and bars and the bed attendants and some of these local people, these Olola, like I mentioned, circumcisers and such. It's normal thing that they just do it. They even drink around it after they must have done it. Yes, you're now a girl. Yes, you're now somebody. But some we really have to continue the education. We really need to continue, and the advocacy must continue too, because even at some places where you feel it to not be discussed, you can raise it. Like when COVID started, we were raising it at every point. So this is a serious issue now that has to do with life. Even hemorrhage again. You see some people just be getting in. What is happening?
Very important question.
But something is happening. So a lot of them, it leads to death.
Thank you very much, Michael. We have a call coming in. Hello, good afternoon. Hello, good afternoon. Okay, kindly call back if you can. Please call back if you can. The number is still 07000 917 917. 07000 917 917. You can send your text or WhatsApp messages to 0703 175 6537. Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for calling. Hello, Tara. Good afternoon.
Yes, I want to know. Basically, I didn't grow up in an environment where this female genital mutilation is common. It's not common from where I came from. So I'm just wondering, how do you identify a newborn child that is just circumcised? Like, how can you tell for a newborn child the time period of the child being circumcised after birth? And what can you tell as a sign?
That's a very nice question. But sometimes it is not. It is always been, even medically, it has to be verified physically, and there will be some tests that will be carried. Like me, I'm not a doctor, so there are limits to where I can even go into. Okay, let me just verify if this is this or that is that. Because by the time we look at some videos during our trainings, we look at different ways, and we look at some of the we look at the way they look, the photographs and the videos of somebody who's not being mutilated and somebody that has been mutilated. We see the differences, the way things are. So that is why we can really know. But parents, they will know. Parents, especially women who must have passed through it, they will know.
What are some signs that you can tell, like a parent now, or somebody who is just looking from the outside?
Signs. When the signs from, it's only when it's open.
So only people that were involved in it.
Were involved in it, and even if it's open, now medical people too.
Yes.
Medical people, they will really know by the time they look at it. Even if there was a time when they said someone was being raped or whatever, you have to see it physically and do some tests and carry out some tests. So, because there are some things being caught during the mutilation, the glitteries and the way they caught, because there are 3 types.
Yes.
So, and before you can even identify all those ones, medical personnel must be involved in doing that. Because some ladies don't even know they were being caught. They will tell you, I'm not aware. But by the time they know, I will say, okay, I want to know if I was really being caught. They go to the hospital. Then doctor will tell them, oh, they did it for you. Or they didn't do it for you. Some will go to their mother and ask, please, was I being caught when I was younger or this and that? Because, the person may have forgotten. So that's
because of maybe how young they were.
And they may not remember. Because, there are 3 types. So with those 3 types, if that one is not there, the glitteries is still there and whatever. So if the glittering is there, the medical people will see it and tell you, oh, you are still intact. You have not been caught.
That's interesting. But I'm glad that you talked about medical people. You mentioned medical people earlier as well. Would you say that a lot of people who are involved in the medicalization of FGM are men?
No, not all men. Even I mentioned at that time that we have some nurses, even some health workers.
You talked about local birth attendants.
Local birth attendants, even some health workers in some primary health care centers, local primary health centers, like HACEY has been engaging them too. Because a lot of them do perpetuate some of these things. They call them, even there are some people, by the time they see them wearing a kind of skirt and top, they'll be calling them nurse. And they do a lot of things, and many of them even lead to getting out of hand, and they rush them to emergency hospitals, for further treatment, and which even lead some to prison too. It has happened in some places.
Interesting. So, we're talking about men as key players in ending female genital mutilation.
Yes.
In your opinion, are there any challenges that men face? Are there any limitations?
Well, like the limitation I can tell you they are facing is fear of the unknown. Fear of the unknown. Say culture. Will I be the first? I mentioned it at that time. Say, will I be the first to now go against our tradition? Our tradition says this. That's one of, is there. Then even in the terrain too, even their family will say, have you done this? Some parents will just come. Have you done this? You now say, no, I've not done it. And that may even cause another problem. And if it's a man that is attached to his parents or his mother, you know how strong that is going to be. And they will say, it's your wife that is dictating to you now. That means you are not a man. The man in you is gone. So there are a lot of things that happens. And some men too will not say, no, because they did it for my mother, they did this, so that my child will not be promiscuous, That's why education is really key. Education is key. And it's examples of those. And some of them who have complications too, there are pictures there. They show them. Because don't think everything will just go the way you people have been doing it. Because by the time you see some growth coming out of the vagina of some other people, that they want to give, when the lady wants to give birth, even during sex, we don't enjoy it. We don't enjoy sex. That it is the man that will not be struggling. Even some men do pity their wives. Say, please, sorry, I know that you are having the pain, you are feeling the pains, So such man will now allow anybody to mutilate is a girl child. You understand?
Yes,
because
of course.
it's a very good example. By the time the person sees the kind of pain the wife is passing through, now at birth, now the wife is unable to give birth. They will not say they're going to do CS. And you know the costs of operating a pregnant woman. So such man is really learning from a hard way. I would never even want to be involved in that. We even be an advocacy and an advocate of
ending female genital mutilation.
Yes, and cutting. We be a serious advocate.
For men that don't believe in ending female genital mutilation, that believe that because it's tradition, we need to uphold tradition, what would you say to men who advocate the end of FGM, to men like that?
Yeah.
How would you say that they should? What would your message be to men that are advocates of ending FGM, as opposed to the ones who think that this is tradition, say it should stay this way, we want our girls to not be promiscuous, etc.?
Well, thank you very much. Like there was a training we had. There was a training we had with some community members. So we are now asking them if they were being caught. Some said they were not. So how did you know? So my mother told me I was not being caught, that my father was against it because of this, and that, some other things. Then they were now citing examples as somebody that was being caught and the one that was not being caught. They now look at their level of promiscuity. Now say, that means that thing does not stop what they were saying it will stop. Because they look at some of these people running around everywhere and they just say, okay, no, that means it's not even a determinant factor that can reduce that kind of thing, that the person will be having the urge to have sexual interaction. I mean, with that. So with that now, we have to tell ourselves as men that we continue to uphold what the law says we should uphold. Because by the time somebody smells the cell now, you will not come back. The person will not come back.
He will come back a changed man.
A changed person. And even when, like, we have in some places now, we have it that if anything like that happens, that they publicize and call the person to the town meeting and say, you have done this, you have done this. So the task force said you have done this. So, you know, it's going to be a shame.
Definitely.
Yes, that's why we are urging our traditional rulers that they should really help us in this. Community leaders, landlord association, like I mentioned earlier, because when you make laws, the law remains. They will enforce it, and it will happen. So that's why we have to talk to. And even our religious leaders, pastor, church, and mosque, and a lot of them. By the time they know that, they will look for biblical passages to back it, and you obey the rule of the land. Laws of the land is there. No ignorance in this issue again. Is there.
All right, so I'm going to read this message. This one is from Rita from Ecuador, and Rita says, the fact that the woman will not enjoy sex is enough for the men to consider the women, because since they can't get pleasure, it will even make them detect mating with their husbands. And you've talked about this.
Yes.
You've talked about this. So in reference to this message now, understanding that this is something that will just make the woman feel a lot of pain and not make sex pleasurable for her.
Yes.
Is this part of the enlightenment that is being given to men when it comes to advocacy for female genital, for ending female genital mutilation?
That's how we are telling men now, especially men that have conscience. You know, you already know what your wife is passing through. You will not want your girl child to pass through such stage again, because it is very glaring. Because this sexual intercourse is, both of us should enjoy it. So by the time one is enjoying and one is being paid, then you know that something else is wrong. So by the time you now say, oh, you are taking pleasure in it, then something is wrong. And that is the behavior we want our people to really take very, very serious.
Definitely.
Very serious. And even at childbirth, those who have witnessed that, those that are spending so much money for operation, for their wife to deliver. You know, I believe they will not even pray for, they will not want their enemies to even embark on such archaic practice.
Thank you. This is still Let's Talk FGM on your Women Radio WFM 91.7, and this is 13 minutes to 3. And we're still discussing today men as key players in ending FGM. Men as key players in ending FGM. If you're just tuning in, welcome, and you can join the conversation by calling the number 07000 917 917. 07000 917 917. You can also send your text or WhatsApp messages to 0703 175 6537. 0703 175 6537. Again, we're discussing men as key players in ending FGM. So there's another message that says, do you think the VAP law has effects on the implementation of FGM?
Yes, thank you very much. That raised a kind of dust. Sometimes, I think about a few months ago, the VAP law is there, but the implementation is what we are working on now. You know, we have laws in Nigeria. Even without VAP law, we already have laws in Nigeria that you do not go, you do not deny people of their rights. If we are talking about rights, it is one of those things. But because it was not really being mentioned, that is why this VAP law was being passed into law in 2015. I think by President Jonathan before he left office. I think around 2015. But last year it was domesticated in Osun. But we're not discussing on how we can implement this and make sure that, and the implementation, like I mentioned earlier, that as we're discussing, we're planning having it published in Yoruba language. That those at the grassroots can really read, even if they cannot read, their children in primary school will read to them. They will know. By the time they know how many years or months of jail term is attracted to somebody who does this. Number one, human rights is something that you must not toy with now, especially in our world now. But when we're not talking about violence against women, violence against girl child, and violence against humanity, you know, is going to be taken very, very serious. But the laws can just be there like paper tiger if it's not being implemented. But by the time you start with somebody, I mean, we have social media now, you can fly it. Somebody did this. And even in court processes, the person is being arraigned and they mention the person's name. You know what it means.
Automatically, you mean
others
jail term.
Others will not want to try it. Others will not want to try it. Just because we have not been implementing some of these things, these are laws. The law is not just there to be in the document and put it on your shelf. No.
So what are some things that can be done to aid implementation?
What can be done to aid implementation is one of those things that I mentioned, that task force. We have monitors. We have health service providers that even the primary health care too. They have been grooming them. Like HACEY have been doing that through the Ministry of Women and Ministry of Health. They have been doing that, going down to train some of those people. And if you observe any of your patients that must have done that, you call. I mean,
you can report to the task force or the police.
The police, before even getting to the police, even in the police command now, I think they have some departments that are
gender
desk now. So by the time even we also have FIDA. So when anything like that happens, you have backing. You have your backing. Somebody, even we have whistleblowers too. They will just pretend as if they don't know anything, but they report. But the people just receive visitors in their house and say, please, your attendance is needed. And they will now check. They will check the girl child. And if it's being mutilated, then the people are in for it. And it's going to be followed. It's not at that time the landlord or the landlord association will not say, no, they want to protect such person. Or even the king of that land will not say, please, we will go and settle it at home. It's a cultural thing. No. Culture has no mouth in this again. anything that has to do with life, culture does not have any role to play there. The law of the land must be followed to the letter.
Thank you very much, Michael. As we round off, are there any forms of awareness materials that men can find or get hold of so as to really understand the full effect of what FGM is and how to be proper advocates of FGM as young men, grown men, fathers, so that they can know? Because some people will tell you they've heard about it, in line with awareness and advocacy, they've heard about it, but they're not really convinced.
Not convinced.
So what are some things how can they get hold of some of those materials that can, when they see it for themselves, they can understand that, these things are real and they're actually hurtful to the girl physically and emotionally, psychologically, in every way possible?
Yeah, like I mentioned the other time, some of those videos cannot really be put in public space.
Yes, but are there some?
Yeah, but some materials, I think HACEY have some. They have some, and that they give out during their trainings.
Okay.
So with that, by the time they are going for sensitization and even to be written in, to be published now in local language of that some of the people will understand. Like we have some tribes that will literally have that some they are women. We give birth to about 9, 10, 13 children, and they are doing it to all their children. By the time they write it in their local language, they now say, look at the implication, look at what you are causing for. And that's why you see some grandmas crying about that their daughters are not giving birth, without knowing that they must have caused that damage from the beginning of that girl's life. So by the time we have some pictorial things that we show, like I mentioned then, that by the time they look at some of those things, some men will be weeping, like I told you. They say, hey, is this what normally happens to some people when it doesn't go the way they thought?
Exactly.
So by the time they look at it, experts will now tell them this, and tell them the reasons and why this is this. God knows why He created those things.
Yes, definitely. All right, Michael, as a round off, what are your final words for men that do not know enough, and for those who also just want to be advocates of ending female genital mutilation?
Yes, thank you very much. I want to advise our men, please come and join our team. Our team is ending female genital mutilation and cutting. And reason being that it is not really advisable for our girl child to be passing through that kind of trauma, because a lot of them don't get out of it until so many for so many years. It follows them, just haunts them. So whatever they do, they feel the pain. Even some mothers too, looking at their children being hurt by 6 people, 6 women or FT men or whatever, and somebody is not using scissors, blade or anything, cutting on your child. You know what it means. God have the reason for creating it, and you don't really have to go and say you are removing, because by the time you are removing, that's why they become barren. Some you see some ladies who pass through that kind of thing that they don't have it because they must have cut some things. Hemorrhage will lead to some and they will die. And people will say, I know it is God doesn't want that girl to live. No, we should not just be killing our children. So our men, please, let us try and pinch ourselves with ordinary common needle. Pinch yourself and now know the implication when you are not doing it to somebody, to your child.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you for joining us today on Let's Talk FGM. Yes, it's been a pleasure having you today in the studio and, of course, enlightening us on what we need to know as regard men being key players in FGM. Let's Talk FGM is the program that you need to know, that you need to listen to when it comes to enlightenment on female genital mutilation. Let's Talk FGM is an initiative of HACEY Health Initiative in partnership with Women Radio 91.7 and funded by the United Nations Trust Fund to end violence against women. Yes, Let's Talk FGM is Wednesdays 2 p.m. on Women Radio, and we can join hands together to stop female genital mutilation. if you want to report cases, and you should, so to report cases of female genital mutilation, call the number 0812 467 0069. 0812 467 0069. For the last time, 0812 467 0069. And get more information on stopcut.hacey.org. Stopcut.hacey.org. Thank you very much again to you, Michael, for joining us today, and to the producer, Adenike Quadri, and engineers on duty. My name is Samto Titilayo Ajama. Good afternoon.
My mama tell me say she won't carry me go buy biscuits. But say she carry me go to mama house. You wait till mama cut me, Shy, I sit there imagine the pain as it weak me for body. My mama say that to make sure say I know